Hello, here we are on episode 119, How to Harmonize Your Hormones. So excited to dive into this with Dr. Mariza Snyder, who's my friend and fellow oils enthusiast, podcaster. I was actually a guest on her podcast and she was instrumental in getting me to start my own 2.5 years ago. Anyway, it's going to be a great episode. We're going to dive into the physiological and even spiritual implications of hormonal imbalance and how the way that you feel is directly linked to your endocrine system and how things are either firing or misfiring in your body that way. Some of you may or may not know that I have spent the better part of the last decade educating about essential oils and the biochemical effects of the oils in the body, being that oils are plant chemistry. I know a lot of my listeners are followers, or fans, I should say, and followers of the education of essential oils. So we just go a little bit deeper in this episode around how the body takes in the aromatic molecules and the chemical constituents of essential oils. And you could even just say of plant chemistry in general, which oils are. So this is fun, especially as I have talking a lot about plant medicine, my plant medicine journey in Costa Rica. I'm just more and more convinced that essential oils and other gifts of the earth, plants, you could say nature, soil, sun, wind, all the elements are so immediately accessible to us because they grow naturally on the earth. And I'm ever more of the belief and conviction that everything that we need for our healing is already here. We just have to know how to access it. And sometimes we get caught in our heads, maybe going too scientific or having to have things evidence-based before we plunge in and dive in. But that's not the way of the feminine. The feminine, the sacred feminine, moves into her body, gets embodied, and recognizes that when she is in tune with her body, she becomes in tune with the earth and has the intuitive wherewithal to access what she needs to for her healing, irrespective of how it's perceived by others. So that's one of the goals of this podcast and my new Instagram, Soul Essential Cherie, that brings to the forefront some of these beautiful indigenous therapies that have withstood the test of time, that are coming back into this wise woman mindset as we seek to heal the collective. Dr. Mariza Snyder is really a leader in the field of natural hormone healing. She has authored 8 books. She's a functional practitioner. Her newest book, The Essential Oils Menopause Solution, she sent over to me very recently because it's hot off the press. And it's a very comprehensive book, including recipes and all kinds of things. And I'm actually in menopause, so this is a new phase of my life I'm entering. But her previous #1 national best-selling book is called The Essential Oils Hormone Solution, and I refer to it often in working with clients, with my family, with my own body, especially as I was in this crazy perimenopause season of my life. So all of this is coming back to being smart, listening to your body, learning how to access things of the earth and things within you to facilitate your own healing. So for the past 12 years, she's been lecturing at wellness centers, conferences, corporations, all kinds of stuff on nutrition, detoxing, essential oils, hormone health. She's also been featured on Dr. Oz in Oprah Magazine, Fox News Health, Mind Body Green, and many other publications. She has a really great podcast that you may want to check out if you really want to dive into natural health care for the feminine, called Essentially You Podcast. And right now she's got almost 3 million downloads. So this lady is really on a mission to empower women to become the CEO of their health. And that totally speaks my language because I believe that we are the experts on our own bodies. So let's welcome my friend, Dr. Mariza Snyder. Dr. Mariza.
Hello, hello.
Hi. I loved our conversation before we started recording. It feels like you and I are so aligned on this path of empowering women to put their health in their own hands and to be their own healer, essentially, through things that are readily available, tools really, that allow us to feel aligned with our own intuition. But sometimes in saying that, we need other people, or I guess other resources and experts. Like you dove into something so niched that not too many people have taken the time to do. I think you said your book had like 60 pages of bibliography and you're like, oh, I got to cut this out. And the publisher was like, hello. But it's nice when you're on a very focused path of how do I feel alive in my body, which all my listeners were kind of on this devotional self-care path. I'm assuming there's a lot of spirituality to this path. There's a lot of, also this helplessness of there's so much out there. So in saying that that you and I are aligned of going within, being your own health expert, listening to your body and all of that, we also need other people who have done the deep dives like you in this domain of hormones and natural health to be able to give us, but thank you for taking the time. I have your 2 books here in front of me. They're like hundreds of pages and I'm going, where do I even start here? And you and I have known each other for a while because of our business path with essential oils and how we teach that worldwide. I think I first met you in Boulder, Colorado. I don't know if you even remember.
I do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
it was the eclipse, some type of eclipse.
Oh, that's right. It was that big eclipse.
Yeah.
I have pictures. Yeah. That was actually a turning point in my life. Now that I think back on that, that really was a powerful time. So that said, Mariza, you just had a baby.
Yes.
So it's your first baby and your baby, Kingston, he's 4 months old.
Yes.
And so he and I were talking before. You're like, how do you do it? I'm like, I have all these kids. And you're like, what? I don't even. But that season, you were able to birth these books before you birthed your baby, which was miraculous in and of itself. So thank you for doing the work before you brought the baby in, because the whole thing could have, right? Like now that you're in that season of holy cow, it's just this baby. How do I even? So let's start there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've written these books on essential oils and hormones, and it's more than essential oils. It's, there's so much, there's nutrition, all the lifestyle stuff that you dove into study, but you wrote the books. I always tell this to women, like you can read everything on parenting but when you have to put it into practice, and then I'm assuming you had some kind of a hormonal deep dive crash, whatever, or did you avoid that entirely? Like,
no, I did not avoid it entirely. If anything, it was my whole, the second I started a cycle, I would say late teens is when I started to have, period symptoms, PMS symptoms. I think for so many girls, a lot of us not necessarily are eating great in high school and maybe the stresses that are going on, definitely toxins. I remember when I was younger, I would clean with Comet, the green stuff. And if I wasn't out of the bathroom in 5 to 10 minutes, I would have a full out migraine. And that was weekly. And why we didn't change it out, but that was the thing because you just didn't think like that then, all the toxins is the 80s and the 90s. And so I would say that most of as much as I can remember having a menstrual cycle, it was punctuated with a lot of discomfort. And then pair that with other situations that happened to me and being a stressaholic in my 20s, at 30 years old, it felt like someone had Mack trucked me. I had severe chronic fatigue, and it all just kind of piled on top of me. And that's when I knew I was in trouble. Like you think you can get away with it until it like really
your body will hold you up for a while until it can't.
So, and most of us can get away with this for like a decade or two, and then the piper comes and you have to really address it. But unfortunately, we were taught to co-opt or outsource our healthcare to healthcare professionals, but most of them, if not all of them, are not hormone experts. They've had like 10 hours of education in the endocrine system. And so, you're right. A lot of us are realizing we have to take ownership of our health. We have to. Like it's a non-negotiable if we want to be well again. But where do we even start? 11 years ago when I was
even known to even start with what lives underneath the symptom energetically. Much less the science, the physiological manifestation.
Right. Exactly.
Right? But we weren't taught about emotion has energy and there's these things called chakras and you can fall out of alignment energetically through trauma. Or toxins, right? Mm-hmm. I got a psych degree. Do you think there was one mention of toxicity in the body of being a precursor to some kind of a mental illness. Zero.
Or maybe gut issues.
Exactly. There was nothing about the gut brain balance. Yeah. So I want to backtrack just a little bit, because you talked about having painful periods. I did too. I remember being on the floor with cramps and crying and crying and crying. And I was ashamed to, I don't know why, but I was
ashamed to say anything to anyone.
Even my mom, I'm like, I'm just going to bear this. Like, I guess this is just what women do. But I think there's this component too, when we start to come into our womanhood. I was 14 and a half when I had my first menstrual cycle. And that's kind of late, I think, but I don't know. Is it?
I would say on average, it's like 11, 12.
Okay.
I think I was almost 12.
Okay. I was a late bloomer. Everyone was getting boobs before me. That's all I know. I was like, but all of a sudden I blossomed, and I remember just like not knowing what to do with blood and womanhood. Like, what does this have to do with anything? And why? Like, there was just no real, now that I understand like ancient feminine and the sacred feminine and all of the symbolism with blood and life and rebirth and regeneration and really the womb of creation and all that stuff I learned way later in life. I would have loved to have a little mentor just sit with me. And my mom did the best she could, but I was still ashamed in that to reach out.
I was brought up by Mexican Catholics. It was a sin, period. Like, that's what that was.
Yeah. Like the root of all evil, really, because Eve took the apple and had to have pain in childbearing. So anyway, but you experienced pain in your childhood, severe trauma.
Yeah, I did. I was
How did that manifest later in your life with how you dove in? Because every time, I kid you not, Mariza, every time I talk to somebody who's doing something amazing, some kind of an amazing work, there was some precursor, some initiatory really experience in their life that rendered them, you talked about crashing with chronic fatigue, but there were probably things that led to that chronic fatigue from trauma in childhood, right? But you didn't know that. But everyone I've met who's doing deep work in the world and now way shore in some way had some kind of trauma that they had to process through that particular work to render them an expert.
Yeah, I was physically abused, and then I was mentally and emotionally abused. I had a stepmother who literally had a playbook on all the ways that she could set me up for failure. I was locked in a bedroom for years at a time, let out for breaks, bathroom breaks and things like that. And I remember there being a fork in the road when I was 13 years old, where I knew my life was going to go one of two ways. Unfortunately, my brother and my sister I ended up on drugs and just had a really difficult time. They still do today. And I just knew, I was like, I'm going this way or that way. And I decided to step up into a level of overachievement. I read a book a day. I always say books saved my life, and to be able to return that favor, is one of the biggest blessings I could ever do. But I ran towards college. I ran into academics. I was just focused on work, and I became a stressaholic. And that's when I led to the chronic fatigue at 30. For many years, I was doing all of it to prove everyone wrong. There was this idea that I was not going to ever be smart enough, ever be good enough. It was a lack of worthiness, big time. And, but then there was a shift where I was like, I want to channel this success, this energy into something that really matters to me. And that's when everything kind of fell apart. And it took me so long to figure it out. Like, I was green smoothieing, I was kale salads, I was working out, I was doing all the things. Check. Yeah. And then I just kept finding myself right back on the floor over and over and over again. And I was like, what is this? Like, why isn't I'm
it like
doing
an emotional trigger that would put you on the floor, or was it your physical body, or did you know that did you have some awareness that it was a trauma, or?
I had no idea. I just knew I just overworked. I just get back on the saddle and just go, and then bam, and then go, and bam. Like, I was like, I can't just supplement through this. Like, I have to change the core of who I am. And
that's
and
a heady realization.
Yes. I was like, oh, I am driven by, my worth is driven by productivity. I think the only way that I am a worthy individual is if I'm productive. And that was the aha moment. And I still grapple with it. I still fight with it all the time.
Me too. You and I both have that high achiever thing going on. It's like, but you know what? Like, I have a theory on that.
Okay. I'm open to it.
I mean, I could no more not do what I'm doing than fly to the moon. Like, it's a driver for me. It's in my cells. It's in my DNA. It'd be like telling an opera singer, you know, you really should stop singing because you have kids now, or you really should stop singing because X, Y. It's like, no, she has to sing. So this is my song. But like you said, the danger is when we tie our worth into the accomplishments, or because, as you know, you can birth a book or a baby, right? And there's still that you. Like, those are outer manifestations, but you still have to live with you. And so there's so many people, and I was on that track too. Like, I was on burnout track because achieve, check. Why am I so unhappy? Why did this achievement not bring me the level of fulfillment I thought it would? And sometimes we can track that back. For me, a lot of my childhood stuff was tied into being in a high demand religion where there were checklisted things that made you, quote unquote, worthy to have God presence or the spirit in your life. And I was just bracing I was making sure I was doing those things too, not just the health things, but like, did I read my scriptures enough today? Am I praying enough? How about my worship? Like, I didn't realize that was a gift. That was already there. There wasn't anything that I had to do to produce that other than open myself. And what I love about what you teach is that as you get your body cleaner, you are more of this open vessel to receive more of you, more of your spirituality, more of your own essence. When you were on the floor and you were like, okay, what's going on? What was like the turning point for you to bridge over to, getting more of that, I guess, looking at more of the deeper core issues? What was that bridge for you?
I think, for me, it took it, I wish I could say it was like that one moment, because it took a couple of years to really figure out what was going on. And I think when I had exhausted all of the well-researched, physiological things that I was still coming up against it. I was like, there's gotta be something deeper here. And, when it comes to trauma, so many of us, and thank goodness so much of the work around trauma is becoming more available. I would say that our parents, our grandparents, you have massive traumas, and they project them out. Like, there was a lot of swallowed sadness with our foremothers. Yeah. And we could talk, and we'll talk about thyroid because there's a lot with that. And so I think I finally realized, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been shoving this part of I mean, there was a lot of side benefits to that trauma. I would say I'm a product of that trauma 100%. But then I was also, there was a lot of suppression of things too at the same time. And I definitely hadn't addressed it or dealt with it. Right. I just kept working hard so I could push it away unconsciously. And so it wasn't until I started doing the work and really, I think where it really hit me was with the autoimmune condition. When I got diagnosed in 2018, the summer of 2018.
That's pretty recent.
Yeah. And well, I had had it. I just didn't, I was ignoring it, and I was just puffy, and I thought it was weight. I was just, I knew better. Weight is a symptom,
Sure.
Weight isn't the thing.
It's usually a protection, honestly, that we're putting on ourselves for past hurts. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, it was when I deep dove into something, I knew something else was wrong. And it was around the time where Alex and I were talking about trying to have Kingston. But I just, things weren't working right. My whole body was struggling. And that's when I really realized, oh my gosh, all of this trauma, I really needed to deal with it. I needed to, and that's not the language I'm looking for, but like heal it and work through it, and get to it, get to the other side of it. Also, I was really afraid to become a mom because a lot of the mother figures in my life were very abusive and damaging damaging. And I was so afraid that I was even told I would beat my children the way I was beaten. And so I was so afraid of that, that I needed to conquer that too, of just getting to a place of like, one, no one ever had authority to say anything like that to me ever, and just tapping into who I truly was. And so there was multiple levels of healing the autoimmune condition, healing the fear around motherhood. And so I took a full year off. I was 38 at the time, about to be 39. So I took almost my whole year of 39 off just to get my autoimmune into remission, address the trauma, go and do work onto my trauma, and really get to a place of affirming my amazing motherhood abilities, my kindness, my generosity, my empathy, all the things.
You were mothering so many other aspects of your life and your business. I mean, because I
always couldn't see it.
I know, me too. It's like, well, I want to talk a little bit about like, because what this is bringing up for me now is, for so many years, and I kind of alluded to this earlier about like kind of to push down. Not only do we push down our uncomfortable emotions, but we swallow our words. And there is this definite link between, I'm assuming your autoimmune, just what I know of your background, your autoimmune was Hashimoto's. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, and that's like Hashimoto's thyroiditis. It's a thyroid condition, right? So,
yes, it's when the immune system is targeting healthy thyroid tissue.
It's like your body's attacking parts of you are attacking your thyroid.
Mm-hmm. Whether it is accidentally doing it or intentionally doing it, we're not very clear on all that.
Sure.
But yeah, my thyroid was not functioning at 100% anymore.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis in 2017.
So right before me.
Not too far before you. And I was like shocked because I'm like, what? But I was also in real, severe hormonal, like perimenopause. But I want to say,
Amen.
Like, my grandmother had her thyroid removed.
Oh goodness.
My mother's had thyroid issues. My sister that's a year older than me, Tanya, she's had her thyroid removed. I was actually put on these synthetic thyroid hormones. Well, some of them are bioidentical. What's the difference actually between the bioidentical and the synthetic?
Yeah, I can absolutely tell you.
Do they hit the body the same way or
no? So I'm still on a thyroid medication. I'm on Armour, which is a desiccated, natural bioidentical thyroid medic. And it actually, it's almost as like your thyroid is literally just kind of creating that. Whereas a Synthroid or a levothyroxine, a T4.
I was on Leo and Levo. So I was on Leothionine or whatever, the Lexo and the Leo.
The Lexo and the Leo. And what most women are put on the Leo, which is a T4 derivative. And what the concern around that is that the liver really has to kick in, but you could have liver stuff too. And most of us do. Mm-hmm. And so if so a lot of women still feel pretty crappy on a T4, a levothyroxine or a Synthroid, because you're forcing the liver and the gut to do a job that they may not be able to do. And so when you have a natural desiccated thyroid, it's natural. It's both. It's T4, T3, and they work as if your thyroid is releasing them. So that's the difference between those.
Okay, interesting.
But most medical doctors will not recommend the desiccated. You got to go to a functional practitioner to get that.
And I was going to a functional medicine person. And anyway, so let's go back to it. So there's this link between women not speaking their truth and or being silenced and thyroid conditions.
Yes.
And autoimmune, not just
And that's why so many women have thyroid issues. That I have a practitioner of mine is that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
In
for
what
thyroid.
Context? Oh, the thyroid for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Is part of it environmental as well as like whatever we're experiencing in our age?
Yeah, part of it's environmental. Part of it is definitely the silencing of our voices, and part of it is gut concerns as well. 85% of us have some type of gut concern, and it's no wonder we're struggling with anxiousness and depression. And
and if you look at chakras in those regions, the throat center chakra is the obvious one, but the gut, it's interesting because the heart and the mind. So the heart's always trying to send messages to the mind, to the brain. There's more signals that, neural pathways actually that run from the heart to the head than the other way around, but the throat's right in the middle. So the heart's trying to be like, say this, speak this. This doesn't feel right. But that gut instinct, that womb wisdom, you could call it the second chakra. People don't realize that a lot of the gut issues that are arising there in the gut terrain are from an energetic imbalance, from not honoring your gut instinct. What feels off to you that's trying to rise up to your heart's speaking, you're trying to. So when there's a disconnection, I study a lot about multiple braining, the three main neuroprocessing centers being the head, heart, and gut. So when those three, it's like a figure eight, and it starts in the heart, goes up to the head, down to the heart, down to the gut, back up to the heart. And when those are not aligned, in other words, when you're not able to go within and really honor those intuitive impulses, you'll get sick. Parts of you will disconnect and fragment. So much with depression in the gut, as you know.
And so true. And what woman hasn't been suppressed, to some degree?
And we all get energetically like punched in the gut for so many different reasons that are offensive to us. And if we don't process those, like your baby may be trying to digest his life right now. The way that the babies do it, because their brain is not formed, is through their little guts. And so, yeah, I just find it fascinating that all these things are so linked.
Oh, yeah.
Autoimmune conditions.
Well, and also within, as women in particular, too, think about our cycle and the different phases of our cycle. Like every month we're cycling, but every phase of our cycle, whether it's menstruation or that first start of our follicular phase, or ovulation, or luteal, which is broken into two, we go through, we have these emotional realizations. And a lot of where people want us to play is phase one, as we're heading into ovulation, and phase two, which is ovulation, phase three, and where we're our most nurturing, our most energetic, our most outgoing. No one wants the end of the luteal phase, which is where we head into, like, everyone wants us to shut that phase down. And so, the PMS, the mood swings or whatever, but what if that's our voice trying to come out?
Right.
What if that's the phase where we're like, you know what? This is how I really feel about something, And so I think about, like, there's a lot of our menstrual cycle that we don't honor every month. And we don't express, like, I think about that phase, the end of the luteal cycle, heading into our menstrual cycle. That's a time for reflection, deep connection to ourselves, really a take time for us versus a outward giving time. But that's the thing.
Time to retreat, to scale back.
Retreat.
That's like the full moon, which we had, I guess. Full moon is that full expression. And from there it wanes. The moon cycle literally wanes and wanes and wanes. And so we are supposed to slow down gradually as that moon is waning. And then when it waxes, we can build
go back up. Yeah. And so when we've just been taught to fight that whole process, you get on that Peloton, you work out really hard.
And if you told a doctor, like, I'm working with my moon cycle, they'd be like, do you need a prescription for antipsychotic? Because like what you're saying right now makes zero sense. Are you like a witch? But it's interesting. I'm in menopause. I have been for 2 years now. I'm 52. So I guess it's almost been 3 years. I started at 49.
Congratulations.
Thanks. It's so exciting.
Right? You're like a new beginning.
But leading up to it.
Oh my gosh. That's what women don't know. It's the leading up to it that is the struggle. Everyone, they dub it menopause. It's a scary thing. And I'm like, no one's talking about perimenopause. How did that get buried?
That was lost on me. And I was on all the hormones to try to, and I've recently, I told you when we were talking earlier, I kind of had this beautiful spiritual sort of awakening around, there were some side effects to what I was taking that I wasn't aware of for the hormones. And so I kind of just have replaced everything with diet and nutrition and yoga and slowing down. This is a season in my life because I pounded it out, man. I was a workaholic.
Yes, you did.
And so now
I'm just looking at your accolades and the 6 beautiful kids in the time frame. You know, you I just want to take a moment and just honor you in all that you've created and all that you've given to this world and to your family. And I'm just always in such, I am in more awe of women today now that I'm a mom, because I just didn't know than I was before. But I've always been blown away by women. Just the miraculous happens.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. And I honor your work equally. I'm like, how the heck did she get these 2 books done? I'm still trying to get mine done after like 10 years. But I think as women, we do have a capacity to do more because our brains are more activated, more of our brains. And we, you know, there's that super mom where you're holding up, like, I will do this. For me, it was like a big part of my path in natural health was to break familial patterns of a mental illness, having lost a sister to suicide, having siblings diagnosed bipolar, having lost an aunt to suicide. For me, when I was listening to you talk about how you just went into action and you just almost like that masculine side of us where we just achieve and it's all the, you know, things that we're trying to like ward something off that could potentially come up. For me, what I inadvertently was warding off was getting depression. So it was almost like this cloud because of my family history is so with this multi-generational. And so it would start to come and I would work harder. So I would double down on things like my spiritual practices and my business and even mothering in my relationships so that I didn't have to deal with that cloud. It's like
you were running
me
and succeeding.
Yeah. And when I allowed myself to feel what was in that cloud, it wasn't there to take me down. It was like information. And I had to allow myself to feel fully all the ancestral stuff and all of it. And it's like it took the fear out of it, but I had so much fear of it hitting me. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in bed for years, like women in my family and different things. And I'm like, no, not me. So we all are doing these escape mechanisms in different ways, these avoidance mechanisms, I should say, because of the protection of our beautiful body and psyche to keep us alive and keep us here. It gets to a point though, when we do crash, and I see a lot of autoimmune, I see women exhausted. Have you ever heard of that book, Burnout?
Oh yeah.
By the sisters.
I'm about to listen to it on Audible. Now it's a medical diagnosis. And I think, there's something to be said about, I don't know what we're recommending. I don't know if you get diagnosed, what the recommendation is for that. I mean, I know what to do for burnout. I've been there. I think we have
to write our own prescription.
Yes, we have to write our own prescription, but it's really fascinating. There's something validating to know that it's being recognized because for so long it was being dismissed.
Sure.
So I will say that I am happy for that.
Yeah, me too. And I know all of the medical literature and research was male focused. It was on a male body. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about oils, because you and I are both huge fans of essential oils and how I know you were telling me before, there's not a ton of research, but it's so compelling for people that are actually living the lifestyle because there hasn't been as much funding for the research, but those of us who are doing this are seeing huge health breakthroughs, both with our clients and our families and our own bodies. But for you really did climb into a ton of research on your own. So how do essential oils, because they are chemical compounds, they are basically plant chemistry in a bottle.
Yes.
So how do they work on the endocrine system, on hormones? What's that link?
Absolutely. Well, again, we know that the endocrine system starts in the brain, in the survival part of the brain. And at the end of the day, I always say to everyone that our number one mode of operation is survival first and foremost. Well, that's just the way the brain has been programmed to some degree. Unless we do some really great work on it, it's just like survival. And that limbic system, because of that, is one of the oldest systems in the brain. And it's amazing how quickly we can shut off, the cortex cortex and other parts of the brain, and to favor the limbic system. Then in the limbic system, we have the hippocampus, the amygdala, the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland. And in that hypothalamus, in the pituitary gland, that's the master control center. That's NASA for our endocrine system. They are relaying information, they're receiving information, and then making decisions regarding our endocrine glands. And so that's where we can really affect some massive change, is really at NASA. And so by simply, specifically choosing an oil, whether it's like a bergamot or it's a ylang-ylang or, any floral. I think if we were to look across the gradient of florals, we would see that they have chemical constituents like linalool acetate or linalool that can really help to support the way that our hypothalamus is functioning and working. I think of it as safety signals. We can breathe in an oil and we can literally send a signal to the brain that says, hey, everything is okay. We can affect that level of change. Because what a lot of us don't recognize is that our hormone system, kind of similar like our neurological system, our sympathetic nervous system or parasympathetic nervous system, they are oftentimes relaying the same messages. And with our hormone system, we're sending information to the endocrine glands. They're sending very similar messages as our central nervous system is into the body. And if we're constantly in a state of we're feeling burned out or we're feeling triggered or we're overwhelmed, especially with this pandemic, I've seen a proliferation of women's hormone issues because of this pandemic. And the number one thing in this pandemic is we are stressed, especially women. Like every woman I'm talking to is all of a sudden it's just more on their plate. I think of my mom. My grandparents have been locked in their house for the whole year. My grandfather just turned 90, and now because of the situation of their lifestyle, I think we've decreased the number of years on his life, and so he's in the hospital right now. My uncle, her brother had a stroke and had a heart attack. My sister, whatever. We've got a baby. She's grandma now. And I just think about the role that my mom has, just managing just family alone, let alone everything else, work and finance, all the things,
there is more on our plates for sure.
Oh yeah. Way more on her plate. And, and I was just talking to her yesterday, she hasn't seen the baby in 3 weeks because she's been taking care of her parents, and all she wants to do is see the baby. That's really all she wants to do. She's got an interesting relationship with her mother. And she doesn't want to be there. She wants to be with Kingston. And so there's that too, right? All of that. And stress and all the stuff is coming up. So when I've noticed is that when our stress response system is out of control because we are dealing with so much more than we ever were meant to, that has a profound impact on the thyroid, on our insulin levels, on our menstrual cycle. It's shortening women's menstrual cycles. Their PMS symptoms are significantly worse. And it's affecting energy levels, mitochondrial function. And so by even using essential oils on the highest level at the hypothalamus and the amygdala, we are able to shift how our hormone system and our endocrine system is functioning in the body. We can take ourselves from a stress response of survival mode to a state of everything is okay. And we can stop the cascade of massive hormone shifts inside of the body. So I think that's one of the most powerful ways that we can elicit change. Clearly, we can elicit some change on literally within the glands themselves. But again, if the gland is receiving messages from the brain based on environmental stressors, we've got to address that first and foremost. We've got to address the trauma that keeps getting triggered. We've got to address the stress response system that keeps firing off 50 times a day.
In my experience, sorry to interrupt you, but in my experience, I think I see essential oils as a catalyst to bring the trauma to the forefront, where we've been pushing it down just because of the way they work on the receptors. Different oils chemically have, like you said, some of them have linalool and some of them have sesquiterpenes and, monoterpenes. Yeah. And so it's just differently how they're all interacting. And one essential oil with its chemical constituency will make a trigger emotionally for you that wouldn't in someone else. And it just kind of hits you out of nowhere. I'm sure you've had that where you've been teaching oils classes where people have you're doing a demo or something and someone has an emotional reaction. That happens to me a lot, but so So that's what's going on then. The oils are creating kind of this new association or this state change. Like you're saying, they stop the cascade of the chemical firings, if you will, from hormonal imbalances as a regulator, would you say? Or
I would say they're a regulator. I would say they're a powerful, I would go so far as to say they're an adaptogen,
Sure. Yeah,
absolutely on that level. And that's really the only thing that I know besides mindfulness and meditation, deep breath. Adaptogens are going to be the thing that's going to make the massive shift. And yeah, they're binding to receptor sites in the amygdala and the hippocampus, in the hypothalamus to make that change. It's telling the brain, hey, we're cool. We're okay right now. And also bringing things up to the surface too. I mean, definitely there's nothing like an unexpected emotional shift that you had no idea coming. And I would say the majority of the time we know the shift that can happen with a specific oil. Like I know every morning when I breathe in tangerine is one of my favorite oils that I'm sending happy bubbles of joyful neurotransmitters into my brain. Like I'm firing off the dopamine, I'm firing off all the good, happy neurotransmitters. And I've elicited that response as well. Like I've helped to create that. That's a very conscious, part of that experience is every morning I set the tone for my day. Like I always want life happening for me, not to me. And I want my day to unfold for me, not to me. And how I shift it is really shifting the way that I feel, and tangerine, those that high level of monoterpenes and limonene really I feel like it's like an effervescent burst of joy. Yeah. Just an energy.
It's so interesting when you're talking about, so there's, for listeners who may not be familiar, there's 3 ways you can use these aromatic compounds through the essential oil base is through internal usage, which many discourage, but there's a whole other thing we can say about them being safe to take internally, at least if they're certified pure therapeutic grade. But then there's aromatic and topical. And in my experience, when you combine the aromatic where it's getting, hitting the olfactory bulbs going up into the limbic brain, it's the only way to access the amygdala is through smell. It's the only pathway that can get into the amygdala. Many pharmaceuticals aren't able to, any that I'm even aware of.
Thank goodness.
And that's our fight or flight center. It's our fear center in the brain. So being able to smell something that's super concentrated aromatically, that with that dense molecular content that an oil has, then you're able to, like what you're saying with that tangerine, literally wake up, send a new message, send a signal, aroma being your most complex of all your senses times thousands. So people think that oils you're just smelling tangerine and it smells good. Because it's no, there's this whole chemical process happening.
There's a whole chemical process happening. And if you combine that with an intention and you combine that with some deep breath work, you're going to get more out of that chemistry. Sure. You're going to double down on the benefit of that chemistry. But at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, and you breathe, someone gives you a tangerine, it's going to shift your chemistry. It's just the way it is.
Well, it bypasses your logic brain.
Yeah, no, you don't get to think.
You're not even analyzing it at that point.
There's no thalamus involved. Yeah. There's no cortex involved. There's no medulla. There's no modulating. No, it is right up the center. And so I always, I have episodes or information specifically like how do we, because you think about when we are in a state of overwhelm, we are in a state of stress, we do oftentimes freeze. We do oftentimes, I call it, we get into a trauma spiral loop. Sure. Now, have you ever been in that state where like it's all falling apart and you're asking yourself all these questions and there's no answer? It just feels like you're just going in this cycle and circle. Yeah, it's loop. And it's very scary. And it's definitely not going to get you where you want to go.
Definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over in that loop and getting
it's very, so I've been there, unfortunately I used to get stuck in this and it's driven by fear, whatever it may be. And very few things I ever had the capacity to get myself out of it. Not like, and if you can just have a millisecond of knowing that you're in it, sure, and you just grab an oil that you know can pull you just by breathing that in, if that's the one act that you can do, you will pull yourself out of that loop. And so I just, the power of that, I don't know anything else like it.
I don't either. Just because it is that organoleptic, it hits all the senses except hearing. Although, we do use it for things that would be an auditory discomfort, let's just say. For me, they're such a powerful emotional anchoring tool. For all the reasons you've just described. It provides a state change. From what I understand about changing and shifting out of things like a trauma response, we have to provide a consistent new association. So smell can be a powerful catalyst. I did a whole session with Dr. Brian Falk on the last episode, just about talking about how you can make these new associations with imagery and smell, and sometimes the feelings that are evoked, because it does hit that limbic brain so effortlessly and so quickly, in seconds. This is why people snort cocaine and do inhalants, because that pathway is quicker than an intravenous injection. It gets in and it's moving things, and it could either create euphoria or it could elicit a trauma response based on the stored memory in your faculties. But anyway, so creating the consistent new association. So for me, my path with essential oils was taking clients, life coaching clients. Well, first my kids and then my life coaching clients, but then myself, I was getting that secondary benefit. Circling back to the hormone thing, because I don't want to blaze past nutrition, because we both are huge advocates of, and your whole book has amazing recipes, and you talk a lot about sleep, how you need hormones for sleep. You need hormones to even want to do the nutrition, right?
Right.
There's thresholds between all these things, like getting the desire to even want to grab the essential oil to get you out of that negative state, right?
Yes.
So you need fuel, you need the impetus, if you will, to get out of the slump and the loop. So I feel like it does start with it really does start with what you're eating, because you have to eat.
Oh yeah. I think that they're in tandem. I always joke, because I've been there. You can't green smoothie your way out of chronic stress. You can't. You if you are tied to that loop, you could, and not that they can't support, you definitely can fuel up those mitochondria, you definitely fuel up the cells, but they'll have
a marginal effect.
Yeah. They'll have a marginal effect on the physiological piece,
but not whatever's creating the stress.
Exactly. That keeps getting you into that state. And when we're in a state of stress, we burn through nutrients. We burn through those calories, but more important, the nutrients, the magnesium, the vitamin D, the B vitamins. And people always ask me, even though I take a multivitamin, am I potentially deficient? And time again, when I used to look at labs, it was a solid yes, because oftentimes we were just burning through so much of it. So nutrient deficiencies, I think, are a big one that we've got to fill in the gaps for.
You can have somebody who's eating a lot of food. Maybe they have a weight problem, but they're starving. They're not getting the right micronutrients and good fats and vitamins and all of
exactly. Yeah. You still, unfortunately, chocolate isn't going to give you the cofactors that your mitochondria need to make energy.
It does create states of euphoria.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's what I would joke. One of the things talking about instant wins and how essential oils just do that. They create these beautiful instant wins. Because let's be honest, Sheree, you and I know this is a journey. Yeah. Right. And so we deserve the instant wins. I said, the only other instant win I know of is like a piece of chocolate. You know what I'm saying? And, from some of us with insulin resistance or whatever we got going on, that's not always a viable option. We need another option. And essential oils are again, the one thing that I know to be true that will create that instant energy win, that instant focus win, that instant relaxation win, that instant calming, self-love win that really only comes from a piece of chocolate.
Exactly. And it is instant.
Yes.
But you can I like your book because you use oils in these tonics and smoothies and a lot of the meals that you're preparing. I know I haven't dove completely into cooking with essential oils, but I have my favorites that I use.
Yeah,
I'm
me
always
too.
drinking lemon in my water, like pretty much all day long.
Yeah, we use a lot of the herbs and the spices too. All the immune system benefits of some of those things are so powerful, or the chelating benefits of pulling heavy metals out safely. Like, so there's so many. I mean, I would go into many different directions here, but yeah, we need all the tools. Basically, at the end of the day, we need the good nutrition. We need the healthy fats. We need the clean protein. We need a lot of veggies, a lot of fiber, and then we need the beautiful essential oils to help support that chemistry, that communication, those messengers. We need the
cleansing
nutrients
aspect as well.
We need to support our gut and our liver. You know, our gut and liver need a lot of assistance. Our gut and liver didn't know we would live in this modern world of man-made chemicals, and you know, it's just a lot of it's bombarding us. You know, it's no wonder I've known over almost a dozen women before the age of 45 with cancer diagnosis. That I don't think that was happening 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago. And so, you know, there's a lot of aspects to look at, but I do my best in everything that I do to make it as, you know, to bring it together as easily and seamlessly as possible, because I do believe we deserve a lot of ease and grace. And we've got, and that we get to go inward and really get to know who we are, that inner wisdom, that female wisdom that I think we get to beautifully embrace as we transition from that bridge. Perimenopause is really the bridge from childbearing into
which hasn't been
new life.
Yeah, it hasn't been honored culturally. Like I'm starting to get the gray hairs. I don't, you know, my body's changing. I'm getting those little wrinkles, you know, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to embrace this. I'm not ready to stop dyeing my roots quite yet, but
I don't know if I will be. I'm not dyeing them yet, but my mama started dyeing them at 45. So I know what's coming for me.
Yeah. So it is interesting though, how in some of the more indigenous cultures, the wise woman was so honored and revered, the grandmother of the tribe, and
they don't have menopause or perimenopause.
No,
they don't even have languaging for it.
I started talking about hot flashes with an energy worker, and she's like, we've been taught to swipe those away, but she's like, those are actually your fire energy coming out. Like your, all of the words you swallowed, all of the things you didn't say, all of the things you didn't get to do, all of the injustices that you observed in your life, and you're mad as hell. And that fire is flashing in you. Don't wipe it out. Like it's supposed to be uncomfortable. So I've been working with that a little bit as I, you know, trailed off all of these hormones. It's like, yeah, when I feel it, I start to say this mantra now. You know, and I connect with those elements of fire in me. I don't want to erase them anymore. Now, granted, I'm grabbing peppermint too, because it's not super fun, but I'm working.
No, it's not fun to change clothes. It's inconvenient. And goodness knows, women who are doing a lot of things do not like to be inconvenienced.
But that thermogenic response in the body, you know, we can have seasons when there's a cooling effect. And then there's this heating effect. And it's really interesting. One time I was standing in a movie theater and I was eating ice cream and talking in the lobby with my kids and my husband. And I had brain freeze at the exact time I was getting a hot flash. And then let me tell you, that was really, that was the most interesting experience ever, because they both lasted a long time. Anyway, Mariza, well, any parting thoughts? And I'm going to have links here where people can find you online. As we went down a lot of arenas, like we talked about the silencing of the voice, we talked about thyroid, we talked about unhealed trauma, we talked about the impact of nutrition. We've gone down a lot of roads, you know, with the biochemical processes of the body, especially with when you're using a natural chemical agent like essential oils or a bioidentical hormone. Anything else that you feel like you could add that?
Yeah, I would just say, I feel like the focus kind of, if I were to look at all the things that we talked about today, like kind of what it all connected into was really worthiness. Yeah. You know, that worthiness of our deservingness of healing, deservingness of finding our voice, deservingness of, you know, trusting our intuition, trusting our bodies. I would say that's the big message. And, you know, as we saunter through our 30s, 40s, 50s, which is where women are doing the biggest things, right? This is where we're really stepping into who we are, to really be open to embracing who we are versus, you know, listening to the cultural mandate state of diminishing ourselves. And that healing, all of that's built into this beautiful healing process. So I hope that's what women get from this conversation today, because I think that's where I had struggled. That's why I had the issues that I had. And it's been a long journey.
And there's nothing that we can do to earn our worth. It's intact. Mm-hmm. And I love that you pulled it together like that, because there is a definite emotional, spiritual link between self-acceptance and how hormones function and regulate in the body. And if we can just scale, like if we can go core and just make our biggest practice, when you talked about, I think you called it creating instant wins, right? Celebrate what we're doing right. I just started this acknowledgement journal, just ways that I can bring in that radical self-compassion. But thank you for all the directions we went. I have that effect on people. We think we're going one way and we just splinter off into the stratosphere of like, what should we talk about? But I feel like we covered a lot of ground, and you're right. It really comes back to embracing who we are and honoring our worthiness, because we live, we breathe, we are, and it's enough.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mariza. And give us the website where, for those who aren't looking at the show notes, where people can find you.
Yes. So people can find me drmariza.com, or they can go check out the podcast, Essentially You. It's devoted entirely to women's health and to the pursuit of us just getting to that place where we're feeling so good. Those will be the two places. And then Amazon are where all my books are at. That's the fastest place to find those.
Yeah. And I also have to publicly thank you. I was a guest on your podcast 2.5 years ago, and you're the whole reason I started. Well, you're not the whole reason, but you're the reason I actually took the action step to start my podcast, because after
I was like a little tipping
you
point.
Rolled with it.
Yeah.
You were an inspiration there and got me connected with the right people to get me going on that. So I just have to do that shout out.
Thank you. Yay. Well, I'm so happy to hear that. I love it. I love that you're doing this and you're changing lives. It's just beautiful.
Same for you. Thanks for listening, and I hope that you can learn to create some of those instant wins that Mariza was talking about, giving yourself some of that feminine wisdom so that you can move through your life with more ease and more grace. Personally, I didn't go into too much detail about this on the episode, but I did wean myself off all of the synthetic hormones I was on, and even the bioidentical hormones. That does not mean to say that I won't have to go back on them again at some point, but it just felt like the next right step for me. And I couldn't believe how much different I felt without some of those side effects. I didn't realize how it was impacting my body and the way that I move through my everyday life. So sometimes there's a cost benefit analysis to whether you go on hormone supplementation or not. Like Dr. Mariza was talking about, getting the right nutrition is pivotal. So I encourage you to get her book, both of them, all of them, but her most recent book, The Essential Oils Menopause Solution. And it's also for women who are in perimenopause, that crazy season I was talking to you about when I was on major hormonal cascading and shifting. That's a great book, all about your metabolism, your energy, sleep, sex drive, all of that. And then her other book that I have on my shelf is The Essential Oils Hormone Solution. And it also comes back in with energy and focus and weight loss and how to do all of these things from a natural standpoint. She's gone into great depths with her research, and her bibliography is vast. So go pick those up, and you can find her on drmariza.com. And again, her podcast is called Essentially You. Also, I need to add here that I do have specials going all the time. If any of you want to get started with a wholesale account to get essential oils, I've put together with my team something called the Soul Essentials Kit, which is a collection of essential oils that are meant to coincide with my soul declaration cards as kind of a multi-sensory means to be able to access your mind, body, and manifest, create, heal, etc. So very much all about the divine feminine with those cards. So yeah, if you're interested in learning more about essential oils and how to get them, we do vast amounts of education on my team with that. So just shoot me an email, Cherie@CherieBurton.com, or you can message me on Facebook or DM me on Instagram. So have an absolutely wonderful week, and we'll talk to you next time on Women Seeking Wholeness.